A billionaire with obsessive-compulsive disorder finds his night-cleaning woman asleep in his private chair at 2 a.m. And instead of firing her on the spot, he orchestrates something far more sinister. What started as exhaustion would cost Immani Banks her freedom for 2 years, trapping her in a penthouse prison where every fingerprint could mean punishment, and every breath had to be calculated. Welcome to Stories by Jason. If you're settled in and ready for a good story, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I've got another exciting story coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for the love and support. You're truly appreciated, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me. The Castellano Tower's executive floor was silent at 2:17 a.m., sterile and cold as a surgical suite. Every surface gleamed under motion-activated lights that clicked on and off as Immani Banks pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway, her third shift of an 18-hour day blurring into mechanical movement. Her feet ached in discount sneakers held together with duct tape. Her eyes burned from the chemical smell of industrial cleaner. Her mind had stopped processing thoughts 2 hours ago. Now she just moved, sprayed, wiped, moved again. She wasn't supposed to be on the 47th floor. The executive suites had their own dedicated cleaning team, unionized workers with benefits and reasonable hours. But Marcus had called in sick, and Immani's supervisor knew she'd never say no to an extra $50, not with her mother's medication costs climbing every month and her sister's tuition due next week. Just do the basics, her supervisor had said. Don't touch anything important, in and out. Immani nodded, already half asleep standing up. She should have left the corner office for last. She should have propped the door open. She should have noticed the name on the frosted glass, Damon Castellano, CEO. But exhaustion makes you sloppy. The office was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that probably cost more than her annual income, air that smelled like leather and something expensive she couldn't name. Everything was arranged with mathematical precision. Not a pen out of place. Not a fingerprint visible anywhere. Immani's training kicked in automatically. Dust the desk. Empty the trash. Wait, there was no trash. Check the windows. Vacuum The leather chair behind the desk called to her like a siren song. She'd been on her feet for 16 hours. Her lower back was screaming. The chair looked like it cost more than her car. Deep burgundy leather with ergonomic curves that promised the kind of comfort her body had forgotten existed. Just for a minute, she thought. Just to rest my eyes. Immani set down her cleaning supplies and sank into the chair. The leather embraced her like a cloud. Her head fell back against the headrest. Her eyes closed. Just 1 minute. She didn't hear the private elevator open 40 minutes later. Didn't hear the footsteps crossing the marble, each one measured and precise. Didn't sense the presence standing over her until a voice, cold and sharp as a scalpel, cut through her unconsciousness. Who the hell are you, and what are you doing in my chair? Immani's eyes snapped open to find a man standing 3 feet away, arm extended, holding a metal ruler like a weapon to maintain distance. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s maybe, devastatingly handsome in that cruel, sharp-edged way that came with too much money and too little empathy. Dark hair perfectly styled even at this hour, eyes like chips of ice, a suit that probably cost more than her rent. But it was his posture that struck her, rigid, controlled, every muscle tense as if her very presence was a physical assault. I'm so sorry, mister. Immani scrambled out of the chair, her cart clattering. I'm with the cleaning crew. I was just... Cleaning? Damon Castellano's voice was dangerously quiet. You were sleeping in my private office, in my chair. His eyes swept over her, and she watched something like disgust flicker across his features. She was suddenly hyper-aware of how she must look, uniform rumpled, hair escaping its ponytail, probably drool on her chin. I worked a double shift. I just needed. I don't care about your excuses. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. I'm calling your supervisor. You're fired, and I'm billing your company for biohazard cleaning of that chair. Please, I'll clean it myself. Don't touch anything else. The ruler extended further, keeping her at bay. Step away from the desk. Immani moved backward, hands raised. Her hip caught the edge of the desk, and her elbow knocked into something. His phone, the expensive one he just set down, the latest model in a custom case that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. Time slowed as the phone arced through the air. Damon lunged for it, breaking his careful distance, but his hand closed on empty air. The phone hit the marble floor with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. The custom screen, some kind of specialized sapphire crystal, Immani would learn later, shattered into a spiderweb of destruction. The silence that followed was deafening. Damon stared at the ruined device, his jaw working soundlessly. When he looked up at Immani, something had shifted in his expression. The cold anger had crystallized into something worse, calculation. "That phone," he said slowly, "was custom-built, encrypted, irreplaceable, $80,000. Immani's stomach dropped through the floor. I have insurance, I can." "You can what? Your insurance covers $80,000, he laughed, a sound without humor. "You make what, minimum wage? Even if you sued for wrongful termination, which you won't because you were sleeping on the job, you'd never pay this back in your lifetime." "I'll work it off, I'll do anything." The words hung in the air, and Immani watched something predatory flicker in Damon's eyes. "Anything?" He circled her slowly, maintaining his distance with the ruler. "You know what I think. I think the universe just delivered you to me for a reason. I'm short a personal assistant. My last one quit after 3 weeks, couldn't handle my excessive demands." He pulled out a second phone from his jacket, of course he had a backup, and scrolled through something. Immani Banks, 3 jobs, mother with stage 3 kidney disease, sister at community college, 27,000 in credit card debt. Am I close? Immani's blood ran cold. "How do you?" "I know everything about everyone who enters my building. Background checks are standard." He studied her like a specimen under glass. "Here's my offer. You work for me, 2 years, personal cleaning and organizational assistant. You'll live in the penthouse staff quarters. Your salary will be garnished at 90% to pay off the phone debt." 90%, that's illegal? "No, actually. Not when you sign a voluntary debt repayment contract, which you will. Because the alternative is I sue you for the full amount, garnish your wages anyway through the courts, destroy your credit, and make sure you never work in the city again." He tilted his head, studying her reaction. "Or you take the deal, room and board included. Your debt paid off in 2 years. A glowing reference letter at the end that will get you any job you want." Immani's mind raced. 2 years of servitude. But room and board meant she could sublet her apartment, use that money for her mother's medications. No commute meant more time for her online classes, and if she had a reference from Damon Castellano, she could finally escape the cycle of minimum wage desperation. "What exactly would I be doing?" "Maintaining my living space to my specifications, managing my schedule, ensuring nothing in my environment is out of place." His voice dropped. "I have very specific requirements. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, clinically diagnosed. Everything must be perfect. Always. If you can't handle that, leave now and I'll see you in court." She should run. Every instinct screamed danger. But Immani thought of her mother's medical bills, her sister's dreams of becoming a nurse, the credit card statements that made her physically ill to open. "I'll do it." Damon's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Excellent. You start immediately. Leave your cleaning cart, someone else will handle it. Come with me." He walked toward the private elevator, never turning his back fully, maintaining distance like she was radioactive. Immani followed, her exhaustion forgotten, replaced by creeping dread. The elevator opened into a penthouse that took her breath away, 30-foot ceilings, windows overlooking the entire city, furniture arranged with the same obsessive precision as his office. But it was the silence that struck her. No music. No television, just the hum of air filtration systems. "Your quarters." Damon gestured to a door off the main living area. 10 by 12 feet. Private bathroom. You're not to enter any other room without permission and advance notice. You'll receive a manual tonight detailing all protocols. He pulled out an iPad, his fingers flying across the screen. "Sign here and here, initial here." Immani's hand shook as she signed away 2 years of her life. "Welcome to your new prison, Miss Banks," Damon said softly. "Try not to break anything else." As he walked away, maintaining his careful distance, Immani caught sight of her reflection in one of the pristine windows. She barely recognized herself. What had she just agreed to? The manual arrived at 3:47 a.m., delivered to Immani's phone as a 247-page PDF titled Penthouse Protocols and Behavioral Expectations. She sat on the narrow bed in her new quarters, clean and functional but deliberately austere, like a very expensive prison cell, and scrolled through rules that grew increasingly bizarre. All surfaces must be sanitized with hospital-grade disinfectant twice daily. Cleaning cloths must be white, new, and disposed of after single use. Food preparation requires gloves to be changed between each ingredient. The bedroom must be inspected daily at 7 a.m., no exceptions. There were subsections on proper door closing technique, quiet, controlled, no slamming. Guidelines for voice modulation, soft, even tones only. A 15-page appendix on the precise angle at which towels should be folded. Immani felt hysteria bubbling up. This wasn't a job. This was indentured servitude to a man whose trauma had calcified into tyranny. But she'd signed the contract, and the alternative was financial ruin. She managed 90 minutes of sleep before her alarm shrieked at 6:30 a.m. The manual had specified her daily schedule. 7 a.m. bedroom inspection, 7:30 a.m. kitchen sanitization, 8 a.m. breakfast preparation, and so on, in 15-minute increments until 10 p.m. Immani found Damon already awake, dressed in another immaculate suit, standing in his bedroom doorway with a clipboard. "You're 2 minutes early, good," he didn't smile. "Inspection begins now, you'll observe today, tomorrow you perform." She followed him into a bedroom that looked like a hotel room, impersonal, sterile, everything white and chrome. He moved through it like a surgeon checking surfaces with a gloved hand, measuring the distance between objects with a literal ruler, photographing everything with his phone. The bed must be made with hospital corners, sheet tension consistent across all quadrants, pillows positioned at a 45-degree angle, the distance from headboard to pillow top, exactly 6 inches. He demonstrated his movements precise and mechanical. Any deviation triggers discomfort. "Discomfort," Immani echoed. Damon's jaw tightened. "Intrusive thoughts, anxiety, physical nausea. My brain interprets environmental disorder as danger. It's not rational, it's not controllable, it just is." For a moment she glimpsed something human beneath the tyrannical facade, a man imprisoned by his own mind. Then his expression hardened. "Don't mistake explanation for excuse. You will maintain these standards, or you'll owe me 3 years instead of 2. Mistakes have compounding interest." The first week was hell. Immani's hands cracked and bled from constant washing and chemical exposure. She lost 6 pounds from stress and the rigid meal schedule. Twice, she failed inspections, once for a water spot on the bathroom mirror, once for folding a towel with the tag visible, and watched Damon's cold satisfaction as he added the penalty hours to her contract. But she learned his patterns. He never made eye contact for more than 2 seconds. He never entered a room she occupied without warning. He compulsively checked door locks 3 times before bed. His nightmares made him scream in a language she didn't recognize, something between words and pure anguish. He was more prisoner than she was. 3 weeks into her servitude, Immani's phone rang at 2 a.m. Her sister Shanice, voice breaking. "Mama collapsed. They're doing emergency dialysis. The hospital says, they say we need to decide about her treatment options, but I can't. Immani, I can't afford." "I'm coming." "Which hospital?" "St. Mercy." "But Immani," the doctor said, without immediate intervention, without the new medication protocol, she might not. The line went dead as Immani's battery died. She'd forgotten to charge it, a violation of protocol that would cost her penalty hours, but she didn't care. She grabbed her jacket and burst out of her quarters. Damon stood in the living room in silk pajamas, his expression unreadable. "Where are you going?" "My mother's in the hospital. I have to." "You have morning duties in 4 hours." Immani stared at him, disbelief curdling into rage. "My mother is dying." "That's unfortunate, but our contract specifies." "Fuck the contract," the words exploded out of her. "You can keep your penthouse and your protocols and your precious 45-degree angles. I quit." She headed for the door, expecting him to threaten legal action, expecting cruelty. What she didn't expect was his quiet voice following her. "Which hospital?" Immani turned slowly. Damon had his phone out, already typing. "St. Mercy," she whispered. "I'll have my driver take you. Return when you can." He made a note on his phone, still not meeting her eyes. "Your duties are suspended until your family situation is resolved." The unexpected kindness stunned her into silence. "Go," Damon said, "before I change my mind." The hospital was a fluorescent nightmare. Her mother looked so small in the bed, tubes and wires transforming her into a medical puppet. Shanna sat in the corner, eyes red and swollen. The doctor's prognosis was devastating. Without the new medication protocol and intensive treatment, her mother had 6 months. With it, years. The cost, $180,000 upfront plus ongoing treatment. "We have charity care applications," the doctor said gently, "but the waiting list is 9 months long." Immani sat by her mother's bed, holding her hand, doing math that didn't work. Even selling everything, even if she and Shanice both worked themselves to death, they'd never raise that kind of money in time. She must have dozed off in the chair, because she woke to Shanice shaking her shoulder, eyes wide. "Immani, the doctor just came back. Someone paid Mama's bill, all of it. The entire treatment protocol, everything." "What, who?" But she already knew. The confirmation arrived via text at 6 a.m. "Your mother's medical expenses have been covered. We'll discuss repayment terms when you return. DC." Immani stared at the message, dread pooling in her stomach. She'd escaped one trap only to fall into another. She returned to the penthouse that evening, to find Damon waiting with a fresh contract. "Your mother's treatment, $183,000, plus the phone, $80,000, total debt, $263,000. He slid the papers across his pristine glass coffee table. "New terms, 4 years of employment. Salary garnishment increased to 95%. You didn't ask if I wanted you to pay her bills. You didn't ask if I wanted you to destroy my phone. Yet here we are." His expression was unreadable. "Consider it an investment. You're adequately trained now. Finding a replacement would be inconvenient." "This isn't employment, this is ownership." "Yes," Damon agreed simply. "But your mother will live. Your sister can finish school, and you'll have a reference that guarantees your future success. All you have to give me is 4 years of your life." Immani thought of her mother's face, peaceful for the first time in months, freed from pain by medication that only existed because of this cold, calculating man. "Why," she whispered, "why would you do this?" For just a moment, something flickered in Damon's eyes, something that looked almost like loneliness. "Because I can," he said. "Sign the contract, Miss Banks." She signed. "Excellent, your duties resume tomorrow at 7 a.m. sharp." He stood, preparing to retreat to his bedroom fortress. "Oh, and Miss Banks, don't confuse my assistance with compassion. This is a business transaction, nothing more." But as he walked away, Immani noticed his hand trembling slightly, noticed the way he flexed his fingers as if they'd touched something contaminated. Nothing about Damon Castellano made sense, and she had 4 years to figure out why. 2 months into her extended servitude, Immani began noticing the patterns beneath the patterns. Damon's morning ritual took exactly 47 minutes. Shower at precisely 101 degrees Fahrenheit. Towel changed twice during the process. Clothing arranged in order of application. Each button fastened in a specific sequence. Deviation from this routine made his hands shake. Interruption triggered what the manual euphemistically called decompensation events. Full-scale panic attacks that left him gasping against walls, skin chalk-white, pupils blown. She'd witnessed 3 such events. Each time, he'd locked himself in his bathroom for hours afterward, the sound of running water and compulsive hand-washing audible through the door. But there were stranger patterns, too. He never touched anything she'd touched without gloves, except once, when she'd accidentally left her phone on the kitchen counter and he'd moved it barehanded, then spent 5 minutes staring at his palm like it had betrayed him. No panic attack, no hand-washing, just confusion. He never allowed anyone within arm's reach, except that Tuesday morning when she'd stumbled on a wet floor and he'd caught her elbow to steady her, skin-to-skin contact for 3 full seconds before he jerked away. No decompensation event, just a sharp inhale and a look of something that might have been wonder. The touching thing obsessed him. She found articles printed out and left in his study. OCD and contamination phobias, PTSD-induced touch aversion, survivor's guilt and somatic responses, all heavily annotated in his precise handwriting. One night cleaning his office, Immani found a journal left open on his desk, a violation of her no reading personal materials protocol, but she couldn't help herself. Day 73. Subject demonstrated natural immunity again today. Physical contact during routine interaction produced no contamination response. Hypothesis: specific neurological association. Or am I simply losing my mind along with my control? Subject: he was studying her like a lab experiment. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it sparked something darker, curiosity about what had broken him so completely that human touch registered as contamination. The answer came during the bedroom inspection incident. It was a Tuesday in April, morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Immani had performed the bedroom ritual flawlessly. Hospital corners, 45-degree pillow angles, precisely 6 inches from headboard. She'd even pre-measured with the ruler Damon had given her. But when he entered for inspection, something was already wrong. His pupils were dilated, his breathing shallow, his hands trembling as he gripped his clipboard. "The pillows," he said, voice strained. "They're wrong." Immani looked at the bed, genuinely confused. "I measured 6 inches exactly." Not the distance, the angle. He moved closer to the bed, his movements jerky, uncontrolled. "They're at 43 degrees, I can see it, I can see." His voice cracked, he dropped the clipboard. "Mr. Castellano." "Get out," but he didn't sound angry, he sounded terrified. "Please just." The panic attack hit him like a physical blow. Damon staggered backward, colliding with the nightstand. A lamp, an expensive crystal thing that probably cost thousands, teetered and fell. Immani lunged to catch it without thinking. Her shoulder collided with Damon's chest, skin touching skin through his thin dress shirt, and for a moment they were tangled together, her hands gripping his arms to keep them both from falling. The lamp shattered against the floor. But Damon had gone completely still in her grip, not pulling away, not panicking, just frozen, staring at where her hands touched his forearms like he was witnessing something impossible. "You're touching me," he whispered. "I'm sorry, I'll." Immani tried to release him, but his hands came up, catching hers, holding them in place against his arms. His skin was fever-hot. Just don't move." His eyes were wide, searching her face. "It doesn't hurt." "What doesn't hurt?" Your touch, I should be drowning right now. In my head I should be seeing." He stopped abruptly, jaw clenching. "But you're just warm." They stood like that, hands joined, for a long moment. Immani could feel his pulse racing beneath her palms, could see the confusion and something like hunger in his expression. Then reality crashed back. Damon released her hands and stepped away, his mask of control slamming back into place so fast it was almost audible. "Clean up the lamp. Bill for replacement will be added to your debt." His voice was cold again, mechanical. "You're dismissed." "Mr. Castellano, I think we should talk about." "You're dismissed, Miss Banks." But that night Immani woke to sounds from his bedroom, not the usual nightmares but something worse. Breaking glass, furniture overturning. A voice, ragged with sobs, speaking words she couldn't quite make out. She knew she shouldn't interfere. The manual explicitly forbade entering his private spaces without permission. But the manual didn't account for the raw agony in those sounds. Immani opened his bedroom door to find devastation. The perfect order destroyed, books torn from shelves, the mattress askew, glass from smashed picture frames glittering across the floor. And in the center of the chaos, Damon on his knees, hands bleeding from where he'd grabbed broken glass, staring at nothing. "I tried," he was saying, voice hollow. "I tried to save them, but the smoke was too thick. I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe. And when I finally got outside, when they finally pulled me out, they were already. Mr. Castellano." Immani approached slowly, the way you'd approach a wounded animal. "Damon, look at me." His eyes focused on her, and she saw a depth of pain that made her chest ache. "I was 8 years old," he whispered. "Old enough to know better, old enough to have checked the stove before bed. But I didn't, and the kitchen caught fire while we slept, and my father went back in for my sister. They died screaming, and I listened from the lawn while firefighters held me back. And then I lived. I got to live with their screams in my head every single night for 27 years. Immani knelt in the broken glass, ignoring the way it cut through her pajama pants. It wasn't your fault. You were a child. My therapist says that too, my psychiatrist, every medical professional I've paid for over 2 decades, but they're wrong. His laugh was broken. Because if it wasn't my fault, then it was just random, chaos, meaningless suffering, and I can't live in a world that random. So I control everything I can. Every surface, every angle, every minute of every day. Because if I can control enough, maybe I can prevent the next fire. Maybe I can earn the right to keep breathing. That's not living, Immani said gently. That's just controlled dying. Damon's eyes met hers, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw him. Not the billionaire, not the tyrant, but the 8-year-old boy who'd spent 27 years trying to die without actually stopping his heart. You touched me today, he said, and nothing bad happened, not to you, not to me. Do you understand how impossible that is? Everyone who gets close to me, they die or they leave or they suffer. It's the pattern, it's the evidence. But you, he reached out, hesitant, his fingers stopping an inch from her face. Why doesn't it work with you? Maybe, Immani said softly, because I'm not afraid of the fire. I'm only afraid of watching you burn yourself alive trying to prevent it. Something shifted in his expression. His hand moved that final inch, fingertips brushing her cheek, tentative, testing, like a man learning to touch the world again. I don't know how to stop, he whispered. Then don't stop alone. The moment stretched between them, fragile and tentative. Then Damon pulled his hand back, but not violently, carefully, like someone putting down something precious. Help me clean this up, he said quietly. And then maybe you could tell me about your mother, about your life before you fell asleep in my chair, about anything that isn't this penthouse and my protocols and the 4 years I stole from you. So they cleaned the wreckage together, Immani sweeping glass while Damon organized books with shaking hands. And for the first time since she'd signed that contract, she thought maybe, just maybe, there was a person worth finding beneath all that carefully constructed control. The days following the bedroom incident shifted into something Immani had no framework for. Not quite friendship. Not quite the rigid employer-employee dynamic Damon had enforced so ruthlessly, but something stranger and more fragile. He still required the protocols, still inspected surfaces with gloved hands, still maintained his physical distance in public. But in private, late at night when the city slept and the penthouse felt less like a prison and more like a sanctuary, they talked. Damon told her about the fire in fragments, how his father had been a firefighter, ironically, and had known exactly what to do but had chosen his daughter over his own survival. How his mother had remarried within a year, unable to look at Damon without seeing the son who'd lived while her husband and daughter died. How he'd built his fortune by the age of 25 through sheer obsessive focus, because if he stopped moving, stopped controlling, the grief would catch him. I bought this building, he said one night, standing at the window overlooking the city, because it has a state-of-the-art fire suppression system. Sprinklers every 8 feet, fire doors that seal automatically, 11 different emergency exits. I own 17 properties worldwide, and every single one is designed around preventing the thing that happened when I was 8. That must be exhausting, Immani said, building your entire life around stopping something that already happened. It is. He turned to look at her, and in the city lights reflecting through the window, his expression was unguarded. But you make it less exhausting somehow. Your presence. When you're here, the volume of the intrusive thoughts turns down. Not off, never off, but quieter. Why me? I've spent 2 months trying to answer that question. Damon moved closer, and Immani noticed he no longer maintained the 3-foot safety radius when they were alone. My working theory is that you're too tired to be afraid of me. Fear generates a specific microbiome, stress hormones, elevated cortisol, changes in pheromones. My OCD interprets that as contamination. But you're so exhausted from working 3 jobs, from worrying about your mother, from carrying the weight of everyone else's survival, that you don't have energy left to fear me. You just exist near me, like I'm normal. You are normal, Immani said. You're just normal with severe trauma and a neurological condition that got weaponized by grief." Damon laughed, a real laugh, not the cold mechanical sound he used in business meetings. "You're the only person who's ever said that to me." "Then you need better people in your life." "I need you in my life," he said, and then stopped, looking surprised by his own honesty. "That came out wrong, I meant." "I know what you meant." Immani stood, closing the distance between them until only inches separated them. "The question is, do you want me in your life as an employee you're paying through coerced debt, or as a person who chooses to be here? I don't know if you choose this, if the choice was real." "Try me." She held out her hand, palm up, an invitation. "No protocols, no penalties, just tell me the truth. Why did you really pay my mother's medical bills?" Damon stared at her hand like it was a test he'd studied for but couldn't remember how to pass. Finally, slowly, he placed his hand in hers, skin to skin, no gloves, no barriers. "Because," he said quietly, "when you talked about your mother dying, I saw myself at 8 years old standing on a lawn watching my whole world burn. And I thought, what if someone had intervened? What if someone with resources had stepped in and prevented that loss? Would I still be this broken?" He tightened his grip on her hand. "I can't fix what happened to me, but I could fix what was happening to you, so I did. And then I trapped you here because the alternative, you leaving, disappearing from my life completely, felt worse than anything my OCD could generate." "That's still controlling me," Immani pointed out gently. "I know, I'm aware of the moral bankruptcy of my actions." He met her eyes. "But I don't know how to want something without needing to own it completely. How to care about someone without controlling every variable to prevent loss. It's the only framework I have." "Then we build a new framework." Immani brought his hand to her chest, letting him feel her heartbeat, steady, alive, present. "You can't prevent every fire, Damon. You can't control chaos. But you can choose to live anyway. You can choose to let people close enough to hurt you, trusting that the connection is worth the risk. And if I lose you like I lost them, then you'll grieve and survive and keep living because that's what humans do." She pressed his palm flat against her sternum. "Feel that? I'm real. I'm here. Not because you're paying me and not because I owe you, but because somewhere in the last 4 months I started caring about the broken 8-year-old hiding behind the tyrannical billionaire." Damon's breath caught. His other hand came up, framing her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything she'd learned about him. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "I don't deserve you choosing to stay. Deserving has nothing to do with it. I'm choosing you anyway. I'm still going to need the protocols, the structure. I'm still going to have panic attacks and intrusive thoughts and compulsions that make no rational sense. I know. And I'm probably going to hurt you. Not intentionally, but because I don't know how to love people without suffocating them. Then we'll figure it out together." Immani tilted her head into his palm. "But first you tear up that contract, all of it. The phone debt, the medical bills, every penalty you've stacked on. You let me choose this freely or we stop right now." She watched the war play out across his expression, the need for control versus the desperate want for genuine connection. Finally, he pulled out his phone, pulled up the contract file, and deleted it while she watched. "There," he said, voice rough. "You're free. You can leave right now. Take your mother's medical care as a gift with no strings. Start your life over somewhere I'll never find you." Immani didn't move. "Or I could stay, not as your employee, as your what friend, project, exposure therapy." "How about," Damon said carefully, "as the first person in 27 years who makes me feel like living might be worth the risk of losing." The kiss, when it came, was tentative, Damon's lips barely brushing hers, his hands trembling against her face, every muscle in his body taut with the effort of not pulling away. But he didn't pull away. He leaned in, deepened the contact, let himself fall into the terrifying free fall of human connection. When they finally separated, he was shaking, eyes bright with unshed tears. "That didn't kill me," he said, wonder in his voice. "No," Immani agreed, "it didn't. Can we do it again?" She smiled. "We can do anything you want, as long as it's your choice and my choice. No coercion, no contracts, just two people figuring out how to heal together." "I don't know if I can heal," Damon admitted. "The OCD, the PTSD, it's neurological, it's not going away." Healing doesn't mean erasing the damage. It means learning to live with the scars. Immani took both his hands in hers, and you don't have to do it alone anymore. 3 months later, Immani stood in her mother's hospital room, not as an emergency but for a routine checkup. The treatment was working. Her mother was gaining weight, color returning to her cheeks, talking about maybe going back to her church choir. Damon waited in the hallway, hands in his pockets, maintaining a respectful distance from the medical equipment and hospital chaos. But when Immani emerged, he immediately moved to her side, not touching, but close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. "How is she?" he asked. "Good, really good," Immani smiled. "She wants to meet you, properly I mean, not as my former employer but as whatever we are now." "Terrifying," Damon said flatly. "Meeting parents is terrifying. You face down corporate raiders and hostile takeovers. Those don't ask about my intentions toward their daughters." But he was smiling slightly, that rare expression that transformed his whole face. "Although I suppose I held her hostage through manufactured debt, but then fell in love with her while she taught me to be human again," is a unique opening line. Maybe lead with something simpler. Immani laced her fingers through his, an intimacy he now allowed, even sought out, though she knew it still cost him something each time. Like, "I'm working on being less broken and your daughter is helping." "That's not simpler, that's just more honest." Damon squeezed her hand. "Okay, let's do this. But if I have a panic attack in front of your mother, you're handling the explanation." "Deal." They walked into the hospital room together. The billionaire with OCD who'd built empires to control chaos, and the cleaning woman who'd fallen asleep in the wrong chair and accidentally taught him that control was just another word for fear. Neither of them were fixed. Neither of them were free of the damage their pasts had carved into them. But they were choosing each other anyway, choosing to build something real out of the wreckage, choosing to believe that healing was possible, even if it never looked like what they'd imagined. And in a world built on chaos and random suffering, that choice, that deliberate, terrified, hopeful choice, was the only framework that mattered. What would you have done in Immani's position? Trapped by debt, forced into servitude, watching a broken man use his trauma as a weapon. Would you have stayed? Would you have seen the 8-year-old boy beneath the tyrannical billionaire, or would you have run the moment you had the chance? This story reminds us that healing is never simple, never clean, and almost never happens alone. Damon Castellano didn't become whole because he was wealthy or powerful. He began to heal because one exhausted woman refused to let him hide behind his protocols and his pain. And Immani didn't save herself through compliance. She saved herself by demanding to be seen as a person, not a possession. If this story made your heart race, if it made you angry at the injustice of manufactured debt, if it made you hope that even the most broken people can find their way back to being human, I need you to do something for me right now. Smash that like button. Show me this story resonated with you. Tell the algorithm that real, messy, complicated stories about trauma and healing deserve to be seen. Drop a comment below. Tell me, justice and healing if you believe broken people deserve second chances. Tell me about your own experiences with toxic control, with choosing to stay when you should have run, with seeing the humanity in people who have forgotten how to be human. Your stories matter. Your voices matter. And this community is built on the courage to share them. Subscribe and hit the bell icon because I bring you stories like this every single week. Stories about people fighting impossible systems. Stories about unlikely connections. Stories about the messy, painful, beautiful process of becoming whole after the world has shattered you. Stories where justice doesn't always look like punishment, and healing doesn't always look like happy endings, but both are possible if you're willing to fight for them. If you know someone who needs to hear this, someone trapped in debt, someone controlled by another person's trauma, someone who thinks they're too broken to be loved, share this video. Send it to them. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know that choosing yourself isn't selfish, and demanding to be treated like a person isn't asking too much. We're building something here. A community of people who believe in messy redemption, in complicated forgiveness, in the radical idea that everyone deserves the chance to heal if they're willing to do the work. Join us, like, comment, subscribe, share. Because stories like Immani and Damon's don't just entertain, They remind us what it means to be human in a world that too often treats people as disposable. And that reminder, that's worth fighting for. I'll see you in the next story. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and never ever let anyone convince you that you're too broken to deserve better. Justice, healing, freedom, that's what we're fighting for. Now let's go.